We're back at it here on the Too Deep NFL podcast. Much to get to today with Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager. I'm Soren Petro. We're talking NFL football. How big of a favorite are the Ravens actually to win this Super Bowl? Do the Bills win the AFC East, or do they not even make the playoffs? Can the Dolphins make a deep run with all the injuries that are piling up for them? Are the Browns built for a playoff run? The Eagles completely broken? Sean Payton versus Russell Wilson. Was this something that was completely unavoidable? Whose fault was it really for the Lions debacle on the 2-point conversion? Who wins the AFC South, the NFC South? Does it even matter? Aaron Rodgers versus Jimmy Kimmel? What are we looking for in Week 18? We talk about it right now on the Too Deep NFL podcast.
You're listening to the Too Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Too Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Too Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Too Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Hey, good evening and welcome. Remember, if you catch us via the podcast, you can catch us when we stream live. We do it on Tuesday nights, 9 p.m., roughly, roundabout, is when we stream live. YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn. Always that you can be a part of the conversation and be a part of the chat there in the chat room. We thank everybody for joining us here tonight, and a lot to get to and a lot to cover as we come down the stretch run in the NFL. The playoffs just around the corner. Jeff, let's start with the Baltimore Ravens, who have locked up the number 1 seed. They are the favorite. How demonstrative a favorite? We'll get the analytics side from Eric here in a second. But how demonstrative a favorite do you think they are?
Oh, as demonstrative as it can be. I mean, I think nobody's going to beat this team right now. And I know I said that back in 2019, and I was wrong. I might be wrong this time, but based on what I've seen over the last 2 weeks, they are ascending. Their defense is lights out. Their quarterback is going to win the MVP. They found more playmakers. Their offense is more dynamic. It's kind of funny because Mark Andrews going down whenever he did over a month ago now, it felt like that was a huge blow to this offense because he was such a security blanket. And what they've discovered is they had this guy, Isaiah Lively, playing tight end behind him, who was way more explosive, way more dynamic, and has become an amazing playmaker for them. I mean, he's only getting probably 3 or 4 catches a game, but it seems like everything he does is now a highlight. When you add it to Zay Flowers, healthy Rashad Bateman, OBJ is what he is, but he's still a veteran who shows up in big moments. And the run game, I mean, we've talked about everybody in this league having flaws. This team right now feels pretty flawless going into the playoffs. So I like them a lot.
What does the math say, Eric? How demonstrative a favorite are they?
Yeah, I mean, we have, if you wanted to look at like a Niners, and the Niners and Ravens combined for 57%. The Ravens make up 24.1%. Of that, they're 48.6 to win the AFC. So about a coin flip, just a little bit of an underdog against the field. I mean, they're very deep, right? I mean, and everybody wanted, the Ravens are the analytical darlings. They're not actually going for the 4th downs that they normally do. But when you look at how they built the roster, they have depth. You think about like their wide receiver 4 is Nelson Aguilar, would be probably wide receiver 2 on the Chiefs. They have Isaiah Likely, but they also, in the same exact draft, Jeff, got Charlie Kohler, who was a good tight end at Iowa State, who's also making plays for them. Gus Edwards has been a running back that's done things for them. People forget that J.K. Dobbins was the actual running back that was supposed to be on this team. He was been out for basically the whole season. They have Melvin Gordon now. They're just a depth-filled team, and you look at even like the last draft where everybody soured on Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum. Even though I think most people had them pretty high on their board, they went and just snatched them up, picking up dollar bills off the ground. They're a very just sound football team from a team building standpoint. And once their quarterback gets healthy, they're really hard to beat. It strikes me as a little bit more robust than 2019 was. 2019 felt like they had a lot of fourth downs. They had a lot of quarterback running. They had a lot of stuff that wasn't as sustainable. This year, it's a lot more Lamar's passing, a lot more defense. I think that they're built better than 2019.
Yeah. How much better is Lamar? How much of this story is that Lamar Jackson has progressed and matured as a quarterback?
Well, I think Lamar isn't necessarily as scary as 19, where he's rushing for 1,200 yards. He's somebody you've never seen before. You think about that highlight against the Bengals in Cincinnati where he's doing 3 or 4 spins and running for 70 yards. He's not doing that kind of stuff anymore, but he is an efficient passer, to Jeff's point, finding the receivers in ways that he's just never. And guys aren't high school wide open the same way that they were in 2019 because of his running. He actually has to make reads and stuff like that, and he's doing that. And he's been very good in a very sustainable way. So I think Lamar is good in a sustainable, mature way, differently than he was in 19, where he was just kind of scary, that year as a runner and as a thrower in different ways than he is now.
Yeah, there are a lot of plays that I've seen, especially in the second half of the season, where you can see him sitting in the pocket for long periods of time, not just going through progressions, but waiting for things to break open, and he would just take off and run after maybe 1 or 2 looks when he was in his second or third year, whatever it was back in 19. And now he's very comfortable sitting back in there. And that speaks to what Todd Monken has done. The protection he has is one of the most underrated parts of this offense, because he's not getting pressured anywhere near he was getting pressured when he was a younger quarterback. He has definitely grown a lot as a passer.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. You were talking about a guy who just got paid, which is supposed to take away all your incentive, right? And he went out and had his best season. I think he's been fantastic, and I give the young man a lot of credit, because we've seen other guys did Cam Newton ever really keep growing as a player? He kind of there are guys that Mike Vick did late when he got with Andy Reid. But those guys that have that ability to just beat somebody with their legs, oftentimes they just fall back on that. And he has that ability, maybe better than any of those guys that we mentioned at running the football. And yet he doesn't just fall back on it. He's made himself the better passer, which is what I think makes the Ravens so scary, is that, I don't look at this team and say, well, they're down 4, they're screwed. They can get it done. And I give their front office a lot of credit too. They've got an expensive quarterback, although it's early and it's not as expensive as it's going to be later on. But he's not a rookie contract, and they've got a really talented team. They've been a great front office for a while, but it's not Ozzie Newsome anymore. Some credit needs to be given to the talent they put around him, Jeff.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and going back to the Cam Newton point, they tried to put these kind of players around Cam Newton later in his career, and he couldn't make it work because he was not didn't have the touch, didn't have the patience, didn't grow as a passer. But yeah, what Eric DeCosta has done as the general manager there, they've really won a lot of day 2, day 3 picks. I mean, Kyle Hamilton, I was a little bit leery of. Here's this tall, rangy safety. Can he really have a place in the NFL? Is he going to be like Isaiah Simmons was for the Cardinals, where he just didn't fit and he just wasn't? And he's become a star. Justin Matabuke, another guy who people didn't know a lot about him. He's got 11 sacks this year. They've taken a host of guys who were veteran pass rushers and found ways to, Jadeveon Clowney is over there doing things. Roquan, really the trade that made this whole thing work for where they are right now was Roquan Smith. Going out and getting Roquan Smith to be the centerpiece of their defense, and what he's brought in terms of not just playmaking ability, but just leadership, and because that defense was kind of not living up to the expectations of the past for a couple of years. Part of it was injury, but part of it was just they just weren't making the same level of plays. and you've seen them get back to that. So I think that DaCosta definitely deserves credit for what he's done.
Yeah, it's been impressive, and they are a scary team. And what percentage you got them at for winning the Super Bowl, Eric?
24.1.
And who's second?
Well, they're first. They're second.
I was going to say
San Francisco's 33.4.
Okay.
How does that work? Explain that.
It's because of the difficulty of the AFC, right?
Yeah, like if you look at the AFC, the Ravens are at 24.1, the Chiefs are at 10.4, Bills are at 8.6, Dolphins are at 3.1, Browns are at 1.4, and a bunch of teams are underneath that. NFC, it's Niners are 33.4, and then you go down to Dallas at 9.3, Eagles at 5.1, Detroit at 3.1. Like it's just consolidated because the Niners are that much more. Like there's just more consolidation in the NFC.
Yes, they're much more likely to be in that game, in the championship game, which is what makes them the favorite. Even though, like power ratings, Jeff, I know you love power ratings. Do you have the Ravens as the top team, Eric? Now,
no, San Francisco would be favored on a neutral against them again.
Really?
How does that work? They just played 2 weeks ago in San Francisco and got their ass kicked by the Ravens.
Yeah.
He's not asking me.
You're the numbers guy. How does that work?
Well, I mean, in the Chiefs Super Bowl year of 2019, they lost to Houston, Tennessee, and beat them both in the playoffs. So, like, a regular season outcome is not, like, that indicative of who the better team is.
Okay. I mean, I think it was pretty indicative in this one.
Okay. Pause. So the first interception by Brock Purdy in that game was horrific. Every other one was like a tip ball. Right? So those like land so, and I know you especially, Petro.
I'm not saying there would be an ass kicking every time, but I think Baltimore proved they're the better team.
So the Niners were 6.5 point favorites in that game. So you take away home field advantage, right? So that's about a 2 point San Francisco, maybe 1.5. So going into that game, the market had the Niners 4.5 points better than any other team in the league. That game, like no game in the NFL, except for injuries, is going to change anybody's power rating relative to anybody else by more than 2 points. So I think if you put those teams on a neutral field again, the Niners would probably be favored by a field goal.
Okay. Good to know. We got it. Let's move on. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. Did they win the AFC East?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are they the biggest threat in your mind to Baltimore, Jeff? In the AFC, I'm talking about.
In the AFC, yeah. I'm debating the Browns, but yeah, they are. I mean, the Browns have beaten the Ravens, but I'm with a lot of people who've mentioned this on our previous podcast that I don't know how much magic Joe Flacco might have against better defenses. But yeah, I feel like the Bills are going to win. I think they win easily against Miami. I mean, I don't know where the sentiment of this could be Miami could end up getting 2 seed is coming from, because they're going to this game without Bradley Chubb, without Xavier Howard. Jalen Phillips is already out for the season. Jalen Waddle's probably not going to play because he's got a high ankle sprain. Raheem Mostert will probably be out there, but he won't be 100%. I mean, like, how many guys do you have to lose in a huge game against a really good division rival before you are completely compromised? So I feel like they can win that. I feel like they'll get a soft 7 seed to play against in the wild card round, and then they get to be at home against probably the Chiefs. And, it's playing in Buffalo. For those who have not been there in mid-January, it's a lot of fun.
Oh, God.
Very cold, very windy, very blustery, all the things that then they like playing in that weather. And so, unless you're going in there with a super talented team that's really ready to do some damage, it could be a long day for whoever goes in there.
I don't believe that even they like playing in that weather. I think it sucks for them.
That was horrible. Well, you've been in that stadium before. It's like the wind howls through that tunnel in the end zone, south end zone, wherever it's at.
Yeah, it's like, listen, it's a lot better for young people than it is old farts. Like, I didn't mind traipsing through the winter's Syracuse when I was 19, 20, 21 years old, but I want no part of it now at this age. But yeah, I do think that they are. I think listen. Why were they in a rock fight though with the Patriots?
Stephon Diggs is missing in action right now, right? Like that's a big issue. Now, look, I'm going to answer the question. I think they win on Sunday. They're 3-point favorites.
Aren't you shocked that that's the number?
I'm not, because Tua has a shoulder problem, right? Jalen Waddle's probably out of that game, if not banged up. They have no, Chiefs legend Emmanuel Ogbah is now going to be playing basically a big role because they have no Phillips, no.
Like you're making my case. Why is it just
that close? Yeah.
Well, it's because the Bills are a privilege. Did you watch them on? Their offense was they had no completions until like halfway through the second quarter.
Yeah,
like both of those teams are humping doorknobs last week.
Where did that come from?
They're just so. But like John, like Stephon Diggs, did Stephon Diggs like make a pass at Joe Brady's wife like that when? And we have exposure to him on fantasy football. I know that sounded weird, but we had a lot of Stephon Diggs in fantasy. And once Joe Brady took over, my guy went from all the catches to none of the catches. And I don't know what's happening there. That offense is just James Cook and Josh Allen running the ball and a little bit of Dalton Kincaid.
Oh, I mean, how much of it is his brother shot his mouth off and the rest of the team went, screw you. Josh Allen said, I'm not going to throw you the ball.
I don't know. But both of those teams are incredibly flawed. I'll just say that. I think that's why the Bills are only favored by 3 because it's in Miami and Mike McDaniel is a better coach than Sean McDermott and Tyreek Hill can, as Bills fans know, can turn a game on a dime. And so Miami's not dead. It's just that, and Buffalo has been a privilege all year. Like they've lost winnable, like they lost to Denver for God's sakes. Like they could lose that game.
If the Bills don't win, Jeff, is McDermott out?
I haven't heard that. I've heard that ownership's pretty much behind him, and the Pagula family they're not as I would say as volatile as some other owners. They're like a David Tepper with the Panthers. They're not so quick to. I mean, end of the day, that this team's won 3 straight AFC East championships since McDermott's been there. They've been in the playoffs 4 years. They weren't doing anything before he showed up, and so you might get the Tony Dungy. We talked about this, the Tony Dungy type comparison, where can they really take the next step with him as the coach? But I think he'll be there after this year. I think they'll make the playoffs. I don't see them. The whole point about the Patriots are a tough team to play against, regardless. I mean, they played the Chiefs tough. They didn't win the game, but the same thing happened with in that Chiefs game. The quarterback stunk. That's why the Chiefs won the game. They got the defense was pretty good for the Patriots in that game. So it's more about the Bills. They will play down the teams. They will play up the teams. But when they have to play, when their backs are up against the wall, they tend to deliver. And so I feel pretty positive that they will actually do that again this weekend.
Okay. All right. I like the Bills in the game, but I wouldn't put anything past McDaniel. I mean, a chip and a chair is all the guy needs. He's got the offense to put some points up there. So I think,
but not having Waddle's a big loss for them.
I agree. But when I look at the spread,
Mostert as well as
I agree with everything that's being said by you. Then why is it only 3? Like somebody seems to know something in my mind. Like that's what I look at when I see that.
Well, but like the Bills, so home field advantage is, I mean, that line suggests that the Bills are 4.5 points better than the Dolphins on a neutral. And I mean, we just saw that team struggle bus with the Patriots, at home.
Wow.
In a game where Bailey Zappi threw 3 picks in the first half of the game.
I don't understand how like that game defines the Buffalo Bills, but the 49ers getting their ass kicked by the Ravens is meaningless.
Well,
I didn't say
Bills'
that.
entire season is mired with games where they let Tyrod Taylor have one pass into the end zone to beat them. They lost to the Patriots earlier this season on a wire-to-wire drive by Mac Jones of all people. Like, this Buffalo team has effed around and found out all year. This hasn't just been one thing. Like, the Niners have mostly been amazing all year and got the shit kicked out of them by the Ravens one game. But, like, the Bills have been this way the whole time.
Do you give the Dolphins any chance of going deep in the playoffs, Jeff?
No. I mean, I feel bad saying that because I've kind of become a big fan of them on Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
They're a fun team to see behind the scenes, but again, the injuries are significant, and just again the lack of success against really good teams. It's just when you only beaten one winning team all year, it does make you. They have the feel of the for those of us who are old enough to remember the '80s Chargers, early '80s Chargers, a team that I used to love a lot because of John Jefferson and Charlie Joyner and Kellen Winslow and Dan Fouts. And I was always excited as a kid to see them playing, and they start playing against tough teams and they would get their ass kicked in the playoffs. And that's what this team feels like. They're probably one or two players away from really being championship caliber. And they've grown a lot over the last couple of years under McDaniel, but they're just so soft when it comes to playing against good teams. And that's really going to be their bugaboo again this postseason.
We don't even want to say this, but like the Dolphins right now are the Chiefs with Alex Smith. Like, they need a real quarterback.
I like Tua.
I like Tua better than Alex Smith. But there's validity in what you're saying there. I mean, I don't think
Tua's been great, but there are levels, right? Like there's limitations to what Tua can do.
I mean, Alex Smith, I don't think he had a 4,000-yard season until his last year in Kansas City, right? Like he's getting there easy. And by the way, it's an older version of Tyreek Hill, that he's throwing to. So, I think
we never had a Waddle type.
That's fair.
This is a stacked offense, and Tua was much worse than Alex ever was until Mike McDaniel got there.
Tua was hurt before Mike McDaniel getting there. I mean, I think I've never seen a group of people go from, and that's the football world, celebrating a guy so much when he first got to Alabama, and then immediately as soon as he got to the NFL, the guy just
buried him.
He's done. He's crap. How do you get rid of him? I mean, like you got to be kidding. Like, Justin Fields is going to be 8 years in the league. People are going to be like, well, I'm not sure yet. We got to get another coordinator for him. Let's get that guy has an unending runway to try to turn the corner. But Tua, 5 minutes after he landed in Miami was ass and has got to go. I never got it.
It's weird, but I think so. I do think there's a chance that the Dolphins can do something. It's kind of similar to the Chiefs thing. Like, if the Ravens, they were in that game for longer than the score implied the other day, for one. And I do think that they make enough big plays. Like, Devin Achane is like legitimate as far as like a big play threat. Like, if they hit a few big plays in a playoff game, like, they could be dangerous. And there aren't that many. Like, if they go to Arrowhead and hit a couple 70-yard plays, you think this Chiefs team could like really actually catch up to that? Like, I think every team in the playoffs, save maybe like the Colts and the Texans, maybe are live. Pittsburgh. I think the Dolphins are firmly in that category of like clearly not a favorite, but can win it all. I think.
Yeah, I think they can. I don't think they can win it all. I think I think losing their ends, both defensive ends. I don't think they can do enough on defense to win it all, but I think they can beat anybody. I just don't think they can win 4 games. They can win more.
They'd have to be the 2 seed to make me feel optimistic about it.
Yeah.
To go on the road, be a wild card. I don't see them lasting very long doing that.
No, I don't either. Do you see the Browns being dangerous, Jeff? Do you like their chances of being why? What about that says deep playoff run?
Just the way, first of all, just the way they play defense. And this is a year where defense is going to matter in the postseason. It's not just going to be about how great your quarterback play is. You're going to have to get some key stops. They turn people over, which I like too. They've got a player who can just dominate you up front, Myles Garrett. And Flacco's giving them a dimension that is undeniable. Now, again, do I think it's going to last forever? Do I think it's like a genie in the bottle type thing or whatever, turning into a pumpkin, whatever metaphor you want to throw out there? Yeah, I think he's on borrowed time. But when you watch that offense, the way they play with him playing quarterback, he's the best quarterback they've had there in the last 2 decades. And so again, we talked about this last week. David Njoku's a whole different player. Amari Cooper, who's obviously been banged up, didn't play last week, but he's going down the field and making plays for them. Elijah Moore is become relevant in this offense. What's going to hamstring them is not just Flacco. At what point does he come back to earth? But their offensive line is really beat up, and so you start getting into the postseason, and you're seeing really good teams that can get after your quarterback. And they've lost 3 tackles, right? Not just the starters, but one of the back coaches is out. So that's a hard way to go. Ask the Bengals how that worked out for them last year. You start taking hits on the offensive line, it's going to catch up to you.
Here's my rub. They have beaten the Jags, who are 9-7. They have beaten the Bears, who are crap. They have beaten the Texans, who
the Bears are still playoff contention.
The Bears are trash. They beat the Texans and they've beaten the Jets. That's the 4-game streak here with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco has thrown 8 interceptions in 5 games, right? He's thrown 13 touchdowns, but are we getting way too carried away on the Joe Flacco part of the equation, at least?
Well, I don't actually think so. I mean, I think that Amari Cooper, I know he was hurt last week, but then David Njoku's a top what tight end in the league? 3 right now? David Njoku's a freaking dude right now. Jerome Ford, who struggled early in the season, he looks really good behind that offensive line, to Jeff's point. That doesn't look great. That's a good Jets defense that they ran around the other day. Cooper, I know Moore is probably not going to play much now after he had that kind of scary injury. But Amari Cooper is one of the best wide receivers in football. I think their offense will carry. I disagree wholeheartedly with the defensive take now. Whenever they gave up a ton to the Rams, they've given up points to real offenses of late. And, Ward's had his injuries, Garrett, Zadarius Smith has been banged up at times. I think their defense is quietly regressed as the season has gone on. And so I don't know. I personally don't think that their defense is all that much better than the Ravens or the Chiefs. And so now their offense is probably better than the Chiefs right now. So does that put them better than the Chiefs in the playoffs? Possibly. I think they're more explosive offensively. But to your point, Soren, the turnovers from Flacco, I think, are going to hurt in a game, much like when they played the Rams in LA. If Flacco starts turning the ball over, I think it's going to be curtains for them. And that to me is the problem, is that I think they're going to be able to put up points, but I don't think their defense is as locked down as everybody thinks it is.
Interesting. How about the Eagles? Are they broken beyond repair, Jeff? Is this defense just in that they have no hope of doing anything?
Yeah. In fact, since we do a Chiefs podcast, I'll bring up the bad news here, that the fact that the Chiefs couldn't do more against that defense tells you where the Chiefs are offensively, because they are a mess defensively. It's only getting worse. I mean, Matt Patricia can't change that since he came in replacing Sean Desai.
Somebody help me out. Who's the guy that went, this is the plan?
The answer.
Patricia.
Same players.
I feel like Patricia's got pictures, right?
I'm stunned at how that has played out, and I'm like, what? They're giving him what about his record says this should happen? I don't get it. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. But you look at who the Arizona Cardinals have one of the worst offenses in the league, and they ran the ball down their throat. The Giants with Tyrod Taylor nearly beat them. I mean, it's just Drew Lock goes down the field, and No offense to all the Missouri fans here who know Drew Lock from the area, but 92-yard scoring drive in the last seconds of that game is just James. I mean, they've gotten old in a hurry. It was always a dangerous thing when you're bringing some of these guys back and you're asking the James Bradberrys, the Fletcher Coxes, and all these guys, and mixing in younger players and asking them to grow up in a hurry. But yeah, I mean, the back end's been an issue all season long, and the bigger issue with the back end now is that they don't pressure the quarterback in the same way.
Well, and I heard this from apologists all over the place. There's the cap doesn't matter people, and actually, I have friends who are in the league who are, I have friends who are pro Eagles as well. You look at their over the cap sheet, and none of those dudes have any paragraph 5. They're all like bonus proration. Like they're gonna be paying Darius Slay for a long time. They're gonna be paying James Bradberry for a long time. They're gonna be paying Hassan Reddick for a long time. They're gonna be like, they've levered up too on a lot of these players. So like whatever they are, and to Jeff's point, everything that Jeff said is correct. Whatever they are, they're gonna be that way for a while too.
Well, and that's the thing that, we talk about, like L'Jarius Sneed hitting the free agent market in Kansas City, whether or not they would sign him or not. This is the team that went out and said, we're going to keep all our corners. And, Eric, you've said for years, coverage is so important, but it's also not sustainable. It has wild swings up and down.
They bought the dip on Bradberry. They got one good year out of him. They said, hey, let me get some more. And it's like, you bought the bad year now.
Yeah. I mean, they are barreling towards a game with some NFC South schlep in the opener. Do they at least get one, or no?
No, I'm writing about this at Sumer Sports. I write a Friday column. Tampa Bay is not like, so let's assume, and I know Tampa slipped up this week against New Orleans. If they play Tampa, Tampa's going to beat them.
And Dave Canellis, their OC's done a good job, and Baker's
Tampa's
played
a real, like Atlanta and New Orleans suck. They played the 2 easiest schedules in the league. They're humping doorknobs this week. They stink. But Tampa's played like a top 12 schedule in the league. Baker Mayfield's been legitimate. Their defense has some actual players. I know a lot of them are hurt right now, Barrett and guys like that. But like, if they catch Tampa in the first round of the playoffs, they'll be favored, but by like a field goal. And Tampa will give them a game.
Would you say that they're humping doorknobs? Temecula wants to know.
If Eric makes an R&B album, that'll be the name of it.
Exactly. Listen, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your lot. Get it restriped today. You can cut down on accidents. You can cut down on distractions. You can focus on your business. Let Gann Asphalt and Concrete solve any of your parking lot problems. They've been doing it since 1994. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, all things parking lot, one contractor, online at gannasphalt.com. Sean Payton versus Russell Wilson. Was this always going to be how it ended, Jeff?
It's very apparent now, and we all thought at some level it would get to this point, maybe not this quickly, that Sean Payton came in there with a mission to blow that place up. And the key domino to fall first was going to be Russell Wilson, which he could then tip over general manager George Payton, get control of the organization, make the new owners fall in love with him, and then see how far he can take a team that's going to be salary cap saddled for the next 3 years. Look, I respect Sean Payton, what he's done. I thought he was completely in the wrong with how he handled Russell. This organization was in the wrong with how they handled him. You signed him to this contract. You believed in him. All this stuff about we're going to bench you, and if you don't do the X, Y, and Z, it's just it's mind blowing. Now we'll see what the NFLPA has to say about it. If there's any kind of legal action involved, but the more you hear about it, we talked about the sideline tirade last week or 2 weeks ago when they were in Detroit. It was just like his whole play here was to get control of the organization, and good luck trying to make moves, rebuild this thing when you're stuck with $85, $89 million cap hit.
Yeah. Listen, by the way, Russell Wilson has 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. I'm not saying he's playing great, But the idea that Russell Wilson was the problem for this team is it's ridiculous, Eric. I mean,
No.
No what?
No, that we've had this conversation before, right? Like, so Russell Wilson, and I guess like the last few games before he actually got benched, he did have over 200 yards, but Wilson was like,
I don't think anybody. Listen, I'm not trying to sell Russell Wilson as still being one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in football, but like, do you honestly? Are you going to sit there and tell me that you have a better chance of winning with Jared Stidham than Russell Wilson?
I think long-term starting Jared Stidham this past week was correct for the franchise. I mean, Russell Wilson has since week 4, 2 games where he averaged more than 7 yards a pass attempt and 0 games where he averaged more than 7.5 yards a pass attempt. He was being like, I don't know what people expected Sean Payton to do. Sean Payton didn't trade for him. Sean Payton didn't sign him to that deal, right? Sean Payton got they traded the first round pick and gave Sean Payton all that money. He is the man in Denver. He is the guy, right? Russell Wilson is the leftover, right? Russell Wilson has to do what Sean Payton says. Sean Payton's the guy. And so when Sean Payton got there, he was like very clearly, right? The only reason Russell Wilson played for the Broncos this year was because the finances made sense. That's, I think, what people don't get. If Sean could have cut Russ this year, he would have, because he played so poorly last year, and he's old, and he wasn't going to get better.
I agree with every word you just said, all of it. I agree with all of it. But it still comes down to, like, the answer is no. Jared Stidham is not better. He's averaging 7 yards.
But Soren, if Russell pops his Achilles and isn't and
I got that. I get it, and I don't disagree with you. Yes, I understand you do not want to be tied into that money, but there is also something like, then don't talk about culture. Yeah. Right? Then don't talk about brotherhoods and togetherness and all that bullshit. If you're going to, as a coach, if you're going to do this to Russell Wilson and treat him on the sidelines the way he has treated him and say the things he said about him, like, do we all agree that they were wackadoos and giving him an office and letting him do all his goofy stuff?
He's the wackadoo.
I got it, but you still, as a coach, you still have a certain way that you need to conduct business.
Sure. And I agree with what you're saying. But I also think that these players are adults. And I think that the moment Russell Wilson showed up on campus there, got his own office, and was doing high knees on the goddamn airplane while other players were trying to sleep, he lost the ability to play the culture card when the coach wanted to do the right thing for the franchise. Yeah, that's my whole thing.
He's not. I'm playing that card. I mean, I think Payton, listen, he made an ass of himself with his comments about,
but they
the Jets.
Yeah, the Jets OC. I mean,
he's not perfect.
Yeah. I mean, he was full of himself when he showed up.
And he's not perfect. I mean, he got suspended for a whole season for giving players money to headhunt Vikings players. Like, this is not. I mean, we're not talking about a great person here, but I do defend him here, because when it comes to giving the Broncos the best chance to win long term, and make no mistake, this is long term. Like, if he played Russ long enough, right? He didn't have to play Russ, and he played him long enough until they had a realistic chance of making the playoffs. Russ shit the bed against the Patriots at home with a chance to make the playoffs. And then he said, we're going to sit you down because we don't want you to pop an Achilles and us to be $37 million on the hook. Like, all that makes sense.
I'll throw this out to you, Eric. Remember when Alex Smith got here and Andy Reid took him and said, you know what? He's not perfect, but I can create an offense that takes advantage of his strengths and makes it work. And he spent 5 years with the guy and got a division title out of it, made Alex Smith into the best player he could be.
4 playoffs.
That's what Sean Payton should have done with Russell Wilson. So sitting here complaining about how fast the plays are coming in and scapegoating him. Take the guy you got and work with him and get the most out of him.
I agree with that, Jeff. But I think Sean Payton's not as good as Andy Reid, and B, Andy Reid at least got
the
to
whole
pick.
point.
But Andy Reid got to pick Alex Smith. Like Sean Payton showed up with Russ sitting here.
Listen, I think we're all pretty much on the same page. We all get we get why they sat down Russell Wilson. You know, it's the handling of the situation.
Yeah.
It's the handling of the entire tenure for Sean Payton. He's been a jackass. And I think it really goes back to, you go, wow, Drew Brees covered up a lot of crap. Yep. Like I agree with the comment. Take away the Hall of Fame quarterback and he's just an average guy. Like,
what? He took Kerry Collins to a Super Bowl.
Who?
The 2000 Giants. He was the OC.
It was Jim Fossil was there.
To the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He's a much better coach than that. What are we talking about?
Well, so when are we going to see it?
He has that Broncos team at 8-8. That team sucks.
He had him there. Russell Wilson didn't do anything to help that out.
They beat Buffalo, who's everybody's talking about Buffalo as the fourth most likely team to win the Super Bowl. He went on the road and beat that team. He beat the Chiefs for the first time in 6 years. What are we talking about? He has Russell Wilson. He has you, Petro, being like, well, Russell Wilson's got 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. Maybe he's actually good. No, Russ sucks. And Sean Payton made him look good. That's the point.
Okay. Listen.
I know he's an asshole.
So what is your prediction? So what is your prediction about his tenure with Denver? So you think playoffs are coming and championships are rolling into Denver?
I think there'll be a legitimate threat to the Chiefs. Yes.
Okay.
I think this is Mike Shanahan in Washington. This has trouble written all over. Just because the salary cap's all screwed up now. How are they going to build a team that he can work? They got to find a quarterback here.
The salary cap was screwed in New Orleans too, and he hung.
And he got out, and he left, and he
that salary cap there was screwed for the last 6 years, and they were still going 13-3. And I know they didn't win anything, but they were winning that division and going deep.
It's called Drew Brees.
Yeah, no kidding.
Drew Brees could not throw the ball 40 yards at the end there. His last year in New Orleans, my friends, his last year in New Orleans, he started 4 quarterbacks in 2021. Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, and Teddy Bridgewater when they combined 12-4 as his starting quarterbacks in New Orleans. Right? Actually, I think it was 12-3. I think Taysom Hill was 7-2, and Teddy Bridgewater is 5-1 as a starter there.
All right.
What are we talking about? They went 9-8 with Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, and Ian Book.
I guess I don't understand the point. Yeah, what you're arguing that
coach.
15 years. How many times have he been to the playoffs?
So they made it in 06. They missed it in 07.
I don't want to. He's 9. He's made 9 playoffs. There's also here's his record every year of his coaching career: 10-6, 7-9, 8-8, 13-3, Super Bowl champions. 11-5, 13-3, 11-5, 7-9, 7-9, 7-9, 11-5, 13-3, 13-3, 12-4, and now he's 9-8. There's a lot of mediocrity. Like, he doesn't suck. No one's saying he sucks, but I vote Drew Brees more the reason than Sean Payton.
He ain't Hall of Fame. He's not going to the Hall of Fame with that resume.
Yeah, no, I agree with Jeff on that one. Who do you blame for the Lions in the 2-point debacle? What's your takeaway from what went down, Jeff, with the Lions end of game?
When it happened, because I didn't see it in real time, I saw it after the fact. When I saw it, I was like, wow, they really screwed that one up. Because my first reaction was, you see Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell with the referee. You see Dan Skipper, number 70, running in. You see the ref running away as Skipper's coming in. And you're like, okay, how could Skipper have talked to the ref? The ref is moving away from him in a pretty loud stadium. Then the play goes whatever. And then after the fact, I was thinking, and just, reading more about it, it's like, yeah, you can't have all these guys hanging around the referee at the same time when you're trying to declare somebody to be an eligible receiver. And so what my takeaway is that the Lions tried to be too cute. The officials screwed it up. And unfortunately, they paid a huge price for it. I think that's the question no one's asking Dan Campbell, or maybe they've asked it since this point, is why did you have all these guys hanging around the referee?
Yes.
Trying to declare eligible receiver.
Listen, Dan Campbell's been a much better NFL head coach than I ever thought he would be. So let me state that as well. And I just the cryptic nature with the way he was answering questions shows the guilt that he has in this. And what I said immediately was, I said, listen, everyone's wanting to make this the referees suck. The referees have sucked for 20 years. Okay, they have not been good. And so we all know it. Dan Campbell knows it. So why do you get tricky with them? Right? Like, whoever your worst employee is, do you task him with the most important job? No, because you're a decent manager, whoever you are. You do not try to get cute needing the NFL referees to be a part of your cuteness.
Yeah.
And so to me, Dan Campbell was getting a complete pass on being dumb. I don't understand. I know it's a great story, but he screwed that up big time.
But Soren, they announced who the eligible receiver is. So you should hear that if you're Dan Campbell and say, oh, they screwed it up. What are you doing here?
Yes.
After they run the play, you can't be all ticked off. And you certainly can't run 2 more 2-point conversions after that just to prove a point.
Yeah. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, look, like, you have to I tire of talking about officiating. I feel like you have to bake in some officiating incompetence into your models.
Yes.
So,
but is this incompetence, or is it just
no? Like, it's incompetence. Like, look, like, Taylor Decker very clearly reported, like, and they very like, look, like, you gotta let me talk, Petro. Okay. I'm talking like. Taylor Decker very clearly reported as eligible. The Lions very clearly told the official before the game, this is our 2-point conversion play. And yet, at the same time, the Lions deserve a lot of blame. Because, to your point, like, they said 70 is eligible, right? At that point in time, I know you don't have any timeouts. You take a delay a game, you kick the extra point, you move on with your life, right? You bake in. And so to say, you weren't perfect, and hence it's your fault. My brothers and sisters in Christ, have you seen officials try to officiate this year?
Yeah.
Right. So in my opinion, the officials deserve the most blame, but the Lions deserve some blame because they assumed the officials would do their job. And that is a stupid assumption to make in the year of our Lord, 2023.
100% agree with everything you said. The one thing I'll take a bit of contention is that Decker clearly reported. He clearly went to the refs. Yeah. I don't know what he said. He's not doing the number symbol, which is what you usually do to report. He never does that. And I think what they did was, and I've read the things where they talked to him beforehand. All game we're going to run 70 in as eligible, but at the end, if we got to have it, we're going to switch it and we're going to do 68. And I'm sure they did say it, but counting on the ref to remember that 4 hours later. And then why is Penny Sewell over there as
exactly.
well? What the hell is he doing?
It's diversion.
Yes. And so what they're trying to do is confuse the defense, and they need the refs to be complicit in it, and the refs can't do their own job. Huh. Like, so to me, Dan Campbell, listen, it's not grounds for firing, but I think he knew it. He knew he screwed up, and that's why he did it. Well, I care about winning. Like, oh, Jesus, like, to the point that Noah John made. Like, yeah, we all care about winning in this league, right? All the coaches do. And I just think that, like, hey, he's such a great story. And right now, he's the 2018 Chiefs, right? He's the 19 Ravens, that team that's new and fresh, and the coach that's new and fresh, and everybody wants to be on board. And so everybody's your champion. Till you've been there for 3 or 4 years, then everybody wants you to lose. They're tired of your crap. But, like, he did not get near enough heat for the execution of that.
Yeah. And if you want to run that play, that's fine. All the subterfuge that went with it, like, you could just ran 70 onto the field, line him up at right tackle. Decker could have been 60. And you could still run the same play.
Yes.
Like, all the stuff you did extra to outsmart yourself just made it. It's like you wanted to rob somebody. Let's have a pretty girl walk by and you bump into him, and I'll get somebody else to trip him up and we'll get the money. It's like you could have made this a lot easier on yourself.
For sure. All right, the AFC South, the NFC South. Who ends up winning these divisions? Does it even matter, Jeff?
Well, it matters from the standpoint, and the AFC especially, it matters because you're talking about who's going to. I think if you're the 2 seeds, you'd rather see Jacksonville sitting there at 7 than Houston. So I'll say Houston wins the South. They beat Indy. Well, no, I'm sorry, because Jacksonville only has to beat Tennessee, right, to win, right? That's right.
Yep.
Okay, I'll take Jacksonville. They'll beat Tennessee, and that'll be the end of it.
You don't have Mike Vrabel coming up with something crafty.
The way they laid down last week, I don't see it happening. On the NFC side, Tampa's, they got to beat Carolina to win, right? That's their last game. Yeah, they'll be all right.
Yeah. Do either one of them, either one of the AFC South winner or the NFC South winner, do any damage in the playoffs?
I agree with Eric that Tampa could upset the Philadelphia Eagles. With the way Philadelphia is playing right now, having lost to the Cardinals at home and in the fashion they did, I would not be surprised if Baker Mayfield went in there and threw for 304 touchdowns against them. Okay.
Eric, what do you see? Who ends up winning these 2 divisions, and can either one of them do any damage?
Yeah, it's weird because, so both Jacksonville and Tampa are playing the last place team in their division, but on the road Sunday, both are about 5-point favorites, but there's been some money on both dogs in that game. I think some people are hedging off a little bit. I agree with Jeff. I see both those teams winning, but it's kind of crazy to me that the Falcons could actually still win that division with a win and a Bucs loss. But no, I see both favorites there. I don't see either team doing much, but I do think Tampa Bay could beat the Eagles. Jacksonville, to me, is broken. Their defense was kind of keeping them afloat and kind of seeing, we were able to ignore how bad Jacksonville's offense had been basically all season. Yeah. And how much Trevor Lawrence was kind of how poorly that offense had been playing all year because their defense was playing okay. And now that their defense kind of imploded until last week, we started to see how bad that team had kind of gotten.
That's the quarterback getting the pass.
Yeah.
We talk about Justin Herbert and bury him. It's just Trevor Lawrence got some questions around him.
Yeah, and a lot of injuries.
Thank you. Yeah. You remember somebody kept saying, I see a lot more Matt Ryan out of this guy than I do see the Patrick Mahomes, the Tom Brady,
Calvin Ridley was the overhyped player in the preseason. Travis Etienne taking a step back. Evan Ingram's actually been pretty good for the most part, but yeah, it's not been a great year for that team. And I think Doug Peterson might get a little bit more scrutiny as well as Trent Baalke. So I don't see them doing much. I think they get throttled in the first round of the playoffs, frankly, by the Browns.
Yeah, I think that's probably happening. By the way, we mentioned Carolina. Chris, how was Tepper throwing a drink on a fan? He was fined $300,000.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
I think it got. I don't know. They're not going to throw him out of the league. You buy in. They didn't run Dan Snyder for decades, right? They're not throwing him out right away for sure. All right, Aaron Rodgers brought up Jimmy Kimmel's name. If people haven't heard about this on the Pat McAfee show, and basically saying that, he asserted that when the Epstein list comes out, or if it does come out, right, this list of people that Epstein supposedly associated with, that Jimmy Kimmel's name will be on it. Jimmy Kimmel responded, "Dear a-hole, for the record, I've not met, flown with, visited, or had any contact whatsoever with Epstein, nor will you find my name on any list other than the clearly phony nonsense that soft-brained wackos like yourself can't seem to distinguish from reality. Your reckless words put my family in danger. Keep it up, and we'll debate the facts further in court." He seems to be looking at, hinting at he's going to sue Aaron Rodgers. What is the moral of this story, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's sort of funny to me that Rodgers had a bunch of fake girlfriends, like Danica Patrick, and I'm like,
we go down the same road Aaron Rodgers just went down.
Do we know that they were fake?
I think we do, right? That those were I think Rodgers is a deeply insecure person that, and like deeply insecure people, like just like they take shots at people and who appear to be like Jimmy Kimmel's like lived a pretty cool life. Like he dated Sarah Silverman. He's had like a great show. Like I don't, he went after Travis Kelce, who's like living his best life right now. Like I think Aaron Rodgers is realizes that like in a few short years, he's not going to have football anymore and no one's going to give a crap who he is. And I think that deeply hurts him. And I think that he's taking it out on other people.
It's like this to me, like big picture wise is not, I mean, like Andy Reid to be losing his mind right now if Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback, wouldn't he, Jeff?
Oh yeah.
Check like this is not good for like, being the leader of a franchise.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to be clear, we're not talking about Juan Epstein from Welcome Back, Kotter or Theo Epstein of the Boston. This is Jeffrey, right? Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
It's the danger of having an open mic and no real accountability, and guys who are becoming incredibly comfortable with just, doing whatever they want. And so, you can't be that flip. I don't even know how you get on this topic on a talk show, on a podcast, whatever it was.
At some point, like, the show is now on ESPN. I'm surprised that ESPN isn't like, that's not usually their MO.
Yeah. Formerly an ABC affiliate or Disney, part of the Disney company. I mean, you should have people, as soon as he's saying that, you should have people going crazy and legal people calling you and saying, you need to walk that back right now because you just can't. So, yeah, it's very bizarre, and the fact that it's gotten this far and no one at that place, like McAfee, anybody with the show didn't just come back and say, issue an apology formally and says, we got out of hand, we're sorry about this. Like when you told me the story, I didn't see it when it happened or hear it when it happened. When you told me the story, I thought it was just like, oh, we're just being goofy or whatever and making fun, but Jimmy Kimmel didn't take it that way.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap up with Week 18. What are we looking for, Eric? What are you looking at in Week 18?
Yeah, I mean, Miami Buffalo is really the one that I'm looking the most forward to. I think that should be a great game. But there's some other weird ones, like how does Minnesota play against Detroit? Like who do they start? Because that one, Chicago, Green Bay, I think will also be very interesting. Who makes the playoffs out of that one? And then, does Pittsburgh, that first game on Saturday, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, can Pittsburgh win 10 games somehow with Mason Rudolph at the helm as their quarterback? That'll be a fun question to start the weekend off.
All right, Jeff?
Yeah. I'll go Buffalo, Miami for a different reason. I'm curious to see what happens if Buffalo somehow loses that game and if all this doomsday scenario comes into play where Jacksonville wins, Pittsburgh wins, and they end up out of the playoffs. And so I don't think it's going to happen. But if it does, maybe that does end up affecting Sean McDermott's job security.
Yeah. I like Rams-Niners. Like, I want to see if the McVay train is really, rolling the way, he said he's coming back next year, but like, we're going to find out because a lot of people, this is a big, to me, one that they, want to go out and make a statement. I think that one's kind of interesting. I'm kind of intrigued by, the Rams really catching fire in this good.
Do you think that they play anybody? Like, I feel like the Niners, I think the point spread in that game implies that neither team is going to play anybody.
I still think that they're a team that needs to have a good showing, right? And so I'm just kind of intrigued by what he will do. I think McVay's a really good coach, but I mean, look, Buffalo and Miami's the game, right? That's the one we're all zeroed in on. But yeah, for one that's got a little nuance to it.
But you're right. In a weak NFC, they could be a very scary. Kyron Williams is the best player nobody talks about. And he has been rolling.
He's the best running back in the league, not named McCaffrey, I think.
Well,
and I think the Rams' ability, we've talked a lot about how they traded away all their high picks. Well, they've got a really talented running back and a really talented wide receiver that they got in late rounds. I mean, a little bit of when they were down, it was fun to kick the Rams and be like, oh, look what they're doing. Well, if they catch a roll here, then they might be the ones laughing last.
The only NFC team to give the Ravens any kind of problems.
Yeah. There's something about having a quarterback that has real talent.
Whoa, is this the same guy who was killing Matthew Stafford 3 years ago?
Yeah, it is.
He's good. I mean, he's playing. Matthew Stafford is. I mean, he didn't play well this week, but like he's been really good this year.
With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project coming with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt and Concrete can keep your parking lot safe, keep you focused on your business. No unnecessary delays, no dealing with liability issues. That's what Gann Asphalt and Concrete does. One contractor, all things parking lot. It's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online at gannasphalt.com. We will be into the playoff edition of Too Deep when we talk to you next. So looking forward to that. We'll have all the matchups ready to go at that point. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Too Deep NFL Podcast.